Hi there, this is Helen Tarrant again from here with our whole team. Wow, it's massive. Hi and welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow here. You're here with Helen Tarrant and I'm here actually at North Lakes in Queensland in Brisbane, on the outskirts of Brisbane doing an inspection. I'm about to do an inspection. The actual restaurant's actually closed till about 5 p.m. tonight, but actually I wanted to talk to you about something a little bit different. The restaurant itself I'm actually seeing is an Asian restaurant here, but what I actually wanted to talk to you about is about special purpose properties. So that is properties that are your pubs, your childcare centres, your service stations. So they're called specialist lending or special purpose properties. And what exactly are they and how do you get lending, and are they a good purchase option for you when you get into the commercial property space? Now, when you are looking at a special purpose, it means that that property is built specially for that tenant. So a medical centre is built purposely for a medical tenant. A KFC, a McDonald's, petrol station, a childcare centre. It's specially purposely built and designed for that tenant in mind. So the tenant would have worked with the vendor, or they would have had specialist advice about that property, how it should be built to reflect the needs of the tenant. So in exchange, the tenant would have signed a longer lease than normal. That could be 10 years, 15, 25 years, if you're in this, the child care space or the petrol station space. And they could have signed that in exchange for having a purposely built building that really suited them, so that when they go in, it's all done for them. They don't have to worry about it. The layout is exactly what they're looking for. So if you're looking at buying one of these properties, firstly, you're going to have to understand that there is only a small number of tenants that will move into that property in the future should your current tenant move out. And of course, your current tenant is probably going to stay there for 25 years and probably continue to stay there into the future. So you don't have to worry about that in that sense. But if, say, in 25 years, you have to do upgrades to that property or you have to find a new tenant for that property, it's going to be extremely difficult and it's going to cost you a lot of money as well, because to repurpose something that's specially purpose, for example, for medical, for normal tenants or normal office space, that is going to require a lot more rejigging and reformatting of the layout, and also about rejigging and reformalizing the entranceway, the use, and also of course compliant for use with the council as well. But also remember that if you go out right now in this market and buy a special purpose property, then that property is you're only going to get somewhere between 50 to 55% LVR from the bank. So you have to put in somewhere between 45% to 50% deposit on that property. So if you're buying a $2 million property, you have to put in $1 million, not including costs, as the deposit for that property. And the reason for that is the bank sees a specialist property is hard to repurpose. So if something did happen to your tenant, it will take you and cost you a lot of money. It will take you a long time to tenant that property. And that is why they lower the LVR, so they minimize their risk as well. So I guess in some sense that tells you whether you should be buying a special purpose property, because if the bank is taking a less risky approach by reducing the LVR, perhaps it's a little bit higher risk than most other properties that are most versatile. Because one of the things I talk about in commercial property is that having versatility in your premise allows you to insulate itself against pandemics, allows against economic downturns. So this way you actually allow yourself to be opened up to have multiple different tenants occupy that premise or change the premise to suit different type of tenants. But certain type of properties, such as your petrol stations and childcare centres, are very, very hard to repurpose, even if you do spend a lot of capital works, because petrol stations typically become drive-thrus, so they can have your McDonald's or your fast food drive-thrus, and they will require them, the vendor, which is yourself or the landlord, to actually basically fill the tanks and line and concrete the tanks so that there is no contamination. And that is one of the big areas and big concerns about repurposing a petrol station. And then you would have to then build on it. Or bottle shops also go into old petrol stations as well. But you've got to make sure that it's not on the contamination register or the environmental register, and that when you check to do your due diligence that they've actually all sealed the tanks properly. Now that's number one. Number two, if you're looking at a childcare centre and you want to repurpose that, there are certain outdoor areas, certain indoor areas, certain ways that they laid out their bathroom all have to be stripped out, and essentially you would turn that into more of an office space, or it really can be repurposed to a community centre or a training centre that is related to allied health or any of those type of tenants. So again, your tenant pool is going to be limited, but it is not untenantable. It just will cost you a lot of money to repurpose it as well. So when you are looking at properties that are special purpose, firstly I want you to think about a few things. Firstly, the LVR, so the loan to valuation ratio. How much money do you have to put into this? Secondly, special purpose vehicle properties, special purpose properties like childcare centres, petrol stations, fast food also get sold on a much lower yield. So can you take 3-4% yield on that property? So on $1 million property, you're getting $30,000-$40,000 as net rent, rather than potentially $60,000 or $70,000 if you're getting a normal tenant. And thirdly, what are you going to do in the future with that property? What is your exit strategy? So if the tenant is on a 5-year lease or a 12-year lease or a 25-year lease, is there an exit point where you go, I'm going to hold this property for 10 years, wait for the rents to go up each year with great rental increases, and then I'm going to sell. In that meantime, I'm just going to sit and take the cash flow. I don't want to get into the time where I have to repurpose that property, so I'm not going to look at a property that is going to be coming to the end of its lease if it's on the market. I'm only going to take a property that is prime with a long lease, and I will be happy if I have to take a 3 or 4% yield. Alternatively, you look at a property that is versatile, a property that may be fitted for multi-tenant, a property that can be repurposed, and that means that puts you into the general commercial property space. So I know that it can be confusing, but the other thing you've also got to ask yourself is the value of your money. If you need to put in 50%, and that is $1 million to purchase a $2 million property, well, you could spend that $1 million as a deposit and be buying a $3 million property instead in a general commercial property rather than a specialist commercial property purchase. So have a think about all those criteria, have a think about all those things before you decide whether a special purpose property is right for you. But if you're unsure and you want some guiding hand, you want someone to help you through the process, do reach out to me at helen@commercialpropertycashflow.com.au or reach out to me at helentarrant.com. So until next time, bye for now.